Joseph Holmes was sentenced to 100 years after shooting at a group of police officers at a club during Mardi Gras. He caused one officer to become permanently disabled, and he caused the death of his nephew, who was being arrested for a misdemeanor. After 44 years, he's up for parole. Let's take a look.
So our first case is Mr. Holmes. Mr. Holmes, would you introduce yourself for the record? Tell us your name and DOC number.
Oh, Joseph Holmes, number 96562.
All right, and you are represented by counsel this morning. I'd like to have counsel please introduce yourself for the record.
Good morning, board. Adrienne Hutchison here, attorney with the LSU Law Parole and Reentry Clinic. With me, I have third-year law student Ms. Maya Hemingway. Ms. Hemingway is Louisiana Supreme Court Rule 20 certified and has assisted Mr. Holmes in preparation for the hearing this morning. She is prepared to make an opening statement, and also Mr. Holmes is hard of hearing, so she will likely have to tell him what you all are saying kind of in between so he can see your lips. So we just ask the board to bear with us while we make sure he understands what's going on.
Okay, good, thank you. Let me introduce the folks. Is there, I see a gentleman seated behind Mr. Holmes. Would you introduce yourself, sir?
Yes, Joseph Anderson, that's my father.
Okay. Let me introduce the other guests. We also have him support Mr. Myers with the parole project. Here in opposition, we have Sheriff Craig Weber, Linda Roberts. Ms. Sheriff is on Zoom, but here in the room with us in Baton Rouge is Linda Roberts, Amy Chasson, Captain John Sutton, who will be speaking in opposition. Others who are here who have filed a card with their remarks noted in opposition: Kyle Crescion, I'm sorry if I've mispronounced that, Lieutenant Bradley Trosclair, Captain Brandy Broussard, Bobby Rumor, Dustin Roberts, Ronnie Rumor, Ozala Eccles, Blake Rumor, Jacob Hoffpower, and Aaron Barnes. Thank y'all all for being here this morning. First, we'll start off with Ms. Hutchinson. Usually we'll ask the offender to tell us why he believes we should vote favorably today, so we can either let Ms. Hemingway go first or Mr. Holmes. You decide.
We'll let Ms. Hemingway go first, and then Mr. Holmes can kind of speak after, if that's okay with the board.
Go ahead.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Maya Hemingway, and I'm representing Mr. Joseph Holmes as a 3L at LSU Law, along with my supervisor, Adrienne Hutchison. I'm certified to practice as a student attorney under Louisiana Supreme Court Rule 20. Mr. Holmes comes before this honorable committee respectfully requesting early release on parole. On April 23rd, 1981, he was sentenced to 100 years in prison for 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder. Mr. Holmes acknowledges the severity of the crime that occurred on February 19, 1980, as well as the significant harm that his reckless and impulsive actions had on all 3 of the victims' families. There's absolutely no motive or justification for shooting at police officers under any circumstance. But for 44 years, Mr. Holmes has continued to take accountability and show a profound sense of remorse for the crime. But how do we know that he won't recidivate? Well, Mr. Holmes' increased age, classification as a first-class offender, and continuously low Tiger score contributes to him being at a low risk to reoffend. Furthermore, his institutional compliance demonstrates his discipline and value in following the rules, which will aid in him obeying these laws if released. Not to mention, his last infraction occurred 27 years ago on October 27, 1997. So today, at 76 years old, Mr. Holmes does not pose a public safety risk. Even the former warden has continuously written letters on Mr. Holmes' behalf, highlighting his readiness for release. Now, upon entering prison, Mr. Holmes was a man crippled by alcohol, one who reacted with impulse instead of reacting with caution. But throughout his time in prison, he's taken full advantage of every opportunity to become a rehabilitated individual. While in Angola, he spent 8 years as a trustee. And additionally, he's maintained his trustee status at Elaine Hunt for at least 7 years. He's even dedicated himself to the service of others by being a hospice volunteer for 12 years, but stopping was his own health decline. In his role as a volunteer, he demonstrated a high level of compassionate care which further solidifies the notion that he can be trusted. One thing that's important to mention is the fact that Mr. Holmes was still dedicated to reformation and rehabilitation, even with the lengthy 100-year sentence. He's worked through his anger and alcohol addiction, both of which played a direct role in the crime. When he was first sentenced for his crime, he wasn't even parole eligible until February of 2000. This just goes to show his strong commitment to self-improvement. His participation in self-help programs like Cajun Rage and his continuous membership in AANA allowed him to see the depth of his wrongdoing. He is now a man today of faith, compassion, and maturity. He is not the 32-year-old man he was at the time of the crime in 1980. Pursuant to Louisiana Legislative Act 790, Mr. Holmes is eligible for parole since he is sentenced to at least 30 years in prison, of which he has already served at least 20 years upon reaching the age of 45. There is no argument that Mr. Holmes committed a horrible crime that requires a punishment capable of deterring others. However, studies show that lengthy prison sentences do not increase public safety in all cases. Continued incarceration of individuals who have aged out of a crime perpetuates Louisiana's practice of over-incarceration and defeats the purpose of deterrence. Mr. Holmes understands the severity of the victim opposition, and although he can't change what happened 44 years ago, he plans to mitigate the harm he caused by never returning to the Thibodeau community. He also plans to have absolutely no contact with any of the victims' families. If granted the privilege of release, he will first complete his stay with the Louisiana Parole Project. Following his stay, he will be moving to Baton Rouge to live with his youngest daughter. This plan would place Mr. Holmes in a stable and familiar environment with the support of his family, including his children who live in the area. And although he no longer qualifies for employment, he still plans to contribute to the community by attending AA meetings, finding a church home, and speaking to the youth about the consequences of incarceration and making bad choices. Mr. Holmes has worked diligently to maintain his sobriety and become a man of faith. Through his 44 years of significant self-reflection, he is now a rehabilitated individual. Mr. Holmes hopes through this interview today, you will be able to see him as a trustworthy man, ready to enter into society. Thank you.
All right, before we turn it over to Mr. Holmes, let me just read some information into the record. I didn't do that at the onset. Mr. Holmes is classified as a first felony offender. He is currently, as his attorney said, serving a 100-year sentence, having been sentenced in Lafourche Parish on April 23rd, 1981, for 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder. His parole eligibility date was June 28, 2013. He does have a good time release date. That's a mandatory release date, and that date is April 29, 2031. Thank you. So, Ms. Hemingway, we would like to hear from Mr. Holmes why he believes we should grant favorably to.
So they want to know, so you need to tell them why you think that you should be released today.
Oh. Why? Okay. I was in the club and go to the bathroom and I'll come back and someone told me, said my little nephew was getting beat up and getting killed on the club. I really didn't know what was happening. You understand what I'm talking about? But until I came in and I saw what I saw, and then they were beating him up with a nice stick and all that. So I came to the aid and did what I did, but I'm very sorry for what I did, inside the club. I was very sorry, very remorseful for what I'd done. As a result, it was Mardi Gras and I was drinking.
But tell them why you should be released today. They want to know why you should be released today. Why do you think you should be released today? That's what they want to hear.
Why I did.
Why should you be released today? Why you should be granted parole?
I should be granted parole. Well, I'm gonna say it like this. For what I did, I feel like, I was wrong for what I did, but I played myself. I played myself before the board this morning, to forgive me what I've done and to give me another chance to be, to get out there and be with my family and to be with my family and my loved ones, because I had been away from a long time, and I got a daughter right now. She's on that first stage cancer, and she really needs me. It's not so much about my family, but I'm thinking about the family of the other people as well, because it really hurt me. And I made a mistake during my younger years, and I'm very sorry and very remorseful for what I've done. And I'm not trying to justify myself right when I'm wrong. And I just place myself upon the mercy of the Lord to give me another chance to be home with my family. And I'm very sorry, remorseful for it. And I take full responsibility of everything what I made a mistake and done.
All right, thank you, Mr. Holmes. Warden Bickham, is there anything you could share with us about Mr. Holmes?
Good morning. Not really. I've only been here a few weeks. I haven't gotten familiar with him, so the records have to speak for itself.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. So now we'll hear from the folks who want to speak in support. Mr. Kerry Myers with the Parole Project.
Good morning, Board. Kerry Myers with Louisiana Parole Project. We supported Mr. Holmes at his last hearing, and we continue to support him. Mr. Holmes has served now 44 years for a crime, obviously, that was extremely serious, but he is a first offender. He doesn't have a career criminal mentality. He committed a serious act, which he has expressed his remorse. We're here and prepared to help him through this transition. We understand that he's going to face some challenges upon release, just simply based on his age and length of time. But we are prepared. We are very aware of Mr. Holmes' needs. We will house him as long as necessary before he goes to his long-term permanent housing. We'll make sure he's connected to all his services. We'll make sure he is connected to his Medicaid. We'll make sure he's connected to SSI and all other services that are available to him. So we just want to let this board know we're here to support him, and we ask based on the time served and his age and his outstanding record during incarceration to grant his parole today.
All right, thank you. And I don't have an indication. Does Mr. Holmes' son wish to say a few words?
Yes. Good morning. As he said, as he spoke, and with my family, we have condolence for the officer and his family. And like I said, for years, by me coming here and sitting down and talking to him, me and him we have a conversation, because we lost a lot of time as well. We lost a lot of time together. So I kind of take the time to come see him and kind of, ask him questions about some of the decisions he made in life. And one of the biggest thing we had conversation was on the night of the incident, and I asked him a question, because for a long time, for a very, very long time, and it's probably hard to say, but I'm gonna be honest, I kind of hated my father for the things that he done to my family, not just my family, but the officer family, his daughter, his wife. And we sat down and we talked, and he told me, son, he said, if I can do it all again, I would change a lot of things that I've done in that time. I said, so, over the years, I watched his growth, the programs that he was in and things that he done, and even much when I come to this facility, I see the growth with him, with interacting with the officers here, and so I'm just here to the support of my father, and hopefully the family. I know it's tough for him. I know how hard it is, because I lost my mother a few months ago, so I know how hard it is for the daughter and the wife and their family. So my heart go out to them, but I mean, I thank God for the board, and I thank God for each one of these people here, these two ladies here. That's pretty much all I have.
All right, well, we appreciate your input. Thank you so much. We'll move on and hear from the opposition now. Sheriff, could we hear from you first?
Yes, Madam Chairman and members of the board, thank you. My name is Craig Weber. I am the Sheriff of Lafourche Parish. I've been serving in this capacity since 1992. With respect to this particular hearing, I was a young police officer. I was 18 years old on February 19th, 1980, which was a Tuesday, and it was a Tuesday of Mardi Gras. Mr. Holmes, among several hundred other people, were gathered at a lounge called the Godfather of Soul, which no longer exists. It was located at 10th and Narrow Street in the city of Thibodeau. It was about 10:30 that night, and this particular building, the entrance to the building had a single door in the middle of the building. It was a rectangular shaped building, long and narrow. And when you entered into the front door, the entire right side of the building had a bar that kind of went from front to back. And then the left side was where patrons would gather and dance and what have you, and the restrooms were in the back. Um, the officers received a call of domestic violence. Mr. Holmes alluded to his nephew. His nephew's name was Wilmer Farragut. Mr. Farragut had committed a battery upon a woman he was seeing at the time. He then went into the lounge, to the back of the lounge. Several officers responded. Wayne Daig responded, Buddy Santamon responded, Keith Chasson responded, and the shift supervisor that night, Ronald Benoit, responded. Because I had just recently been employed for a couple of weeks as a police officer, I was riding with a seasoned officer, Larry Benoit. The four officers I just described went into there to effect an arrest. Larry Benoit and I stayed on the outside where we could monitor the door in case there were problems that developed. They located Mr. Farragut. They took him into custody, and the four officers were escorting him out to the front of the building from the rear of the building. To my understanding, Mr. Holmes at that time, who is his uncle, was seated at the bar with a 38 or 357 revolver, 6-shot revolver in his waistband. As they got closer to the door, Mr. Farragut started to resist. The officers were subduing him, and Mr. Holmes got off of the bar stool he was sitting on, got in a crouch position, and fired indiscriminately into the officers. As things would turn out, his nephew was killed by one of the bullets that he shot. And in particular, that bullet went through the wrist of Larry Benoit, and then it penetrated Mr. Farragut's skull, and then it lodged into the sinus of Mr. Benoit. But for that, Mr. Benoit would be dead. He would have had a shot to the head. Buddy Santamon received a shot to the shoulder. He was paralyzed, and it pretty much ended his career. The man who suffered the most tragic injury was Keith Chasson. He was shot in the back and paralyzed for the rest of his life until he died on March 10th of 2008 and was honored as a line of duty death by the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. I, as an officer, was approaching the building in an attempt to see if we could assist, and there was total pandemonium, as you can imagine. I remember seeing the muzzle flash of the gun from throughout the door. Larry took cover on the side of the car, and Wayne was able to escape. As Mr. Holmes exited, we initiated gunfire. He was injured and subsequently taken to the hospital and recovered. I want to commend him on the things that he's accomplished in prison. It's certainly noteworthy. I also want to offer to him that in terms of forgiveness, can be given, but forgiveness does not equate to release. I believe that his sentence was a just sentence. I mentioned that, but for the fact that that bullet went through his nephew's head, and I don't know why at the time, I didn't take the time to research it. He was not prosecuted for the murder of his nephew because he was certainly responsible for it. Not Larry Benoit, Ronald Benoit would have died, and he would have faced a first-degree murder of a police officer, and in all likelihood been sentenced to death with the other two officers who had those serious injuries. Captain Chasson, he retired as a captain, was a remarkable individual. He never let his injuries get in the way of his commitment to the citizens of Thibodeau, but he was a young man. He was just starting his career. I think he was 23 maybe when he got injured and was confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. So I would like to offer that this was an ambush on police officers. Mr. Holmes was not being arrested. The officers had no interaction with him whatsoever. He made a decision, an irrevocable decision, to ambush and murder police officers. He almost succeeded, but didn't quite succeed. But I don't think just the good fortune of having people not die should mitigate the fact that this crime was so serious that it's one that I believe that demands that he spend his sentence there. I know he's talked about the things that he's missed with his family, and that's certainly a difficult thing for any human being. But I look at the families of those officers who are all now deceased. Every one of them are now deceased. And I don't think, too, that just because Mr. Holmes outlived the victims of his crime should mitigate against lessening of his sentence and his release. Thank you for the opportunity, and I respectfully request that despite the things that Mr. Holmes has accomplished and can continue to accomplish, because he has the benefit of life, he has the benefit of knowing his family and getting up in the morning and breathing air that they don't have. I would ask that he be given his sentence be opposed as a release, and that he serve out the sentence that he was given by the court.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for sharing that information with us. We appreciate it. I'm going to just go in the order that I have you on my list, if you don't mind, for those of you who are here that want to speak. First, I have Linda Roberts.
I want to thank each of y'all for giving me this opportunity. I'm going to take you back a little bit. I'm his younger sister. On the night of February 1980, I was standing outside talking to Keith. He was working shift that day, and he came by and he was like, he had said he was coming by at 10 o'clock. It was around 10 o'clock. He said, I want to let y'all know I picked up a couple of hours for overtime. They're giving us overtime since it's Mardi Gras. So I'm gonna pick up some hours, so I'll be back tomorrow to see y'all. So as we standing there chatting and just saying about how the day was, he got a call to go to for a domestic violence. So as he takes off, I watch him run down the sidewalk. I see him in my, think it was just an ordinary call. He takes off, he runs, and I go inside. A little while later, the phone rings. It's that dreaded call that no police officer's family ever wants to get. I answered the phone. It was to the police department. They were calling to say that Keith was involved in a serious incident that we needed to get to the hospital as soon as possible. So I go wake my mom up, and I'm like, Mom, she's getting dressed before she can even get dressed, and officer pulls up to bring her to the hospital. At that time, it was me and my younger brother at home. When that happens, I told him, I said, it must be something really serious. So we both got on our knees and we started to pray. The next thing I did, my mom called me. She said, he got shot 9 times. They don't know if he's gonna make it. They sending him to Oshner's. So me and my little brother stay. They go, and it's an ongoing thing. Of craziness all night. So the next morning, they called saying that he had been shot twice and that he was going to be in Oshner's. He had a loan. It was a very serious thing, and that he was going to be there for a very long time if he survived. He was paralyzed that night, and that's when our world got rocked. He went from Oshner's, then he went to Colorado for a rehabilitation. He came back, and that's when he went back to the police department working as a dispatcher. He then went up through the ranks. He went as a captain, assistant chief, and he maintained staying working with the police department. I was very fortunate that I not only lived with Keith after he was shot, after he was married, I also worked with him. I cannot tell you of a more proud feeling that I had that I was able to serve with him. I was able to see that he got up every morning despite taking an hour to get ready in the morning, to get in his wheelchair, to come to work, he was there. He never missed a day just because. And I work in the police department now as the chief police secretary. I see some of our guys calling and say how they had. And I'm like, no, my brother came to work many of days, feeling terrible, not knowing how he was going to survive that day, but he did it every day. He continued to work until he was unfortunately succumbed to his injuries in 2008. That was a very hard day for all of us, but we knew he was no longer in pain. So what I come to you today is that on February 1980, Joseph Holmes gave Keith a sentence of living a life in a wheelchair. I pray to you, and I pray and I ask you to please do not approve his request. I ask you that you deny his request for parole, just like Keith lived out his life in a wheelchair. I pray and ask you to please that Joseph Holmes live out his life in prison.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Ms. Amy Chasson.
Okay. My name is Amy Chevron. I'm Captain Keith Chevron's daughter. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. As you know, my father passed away in 2008 as a result of the lifelong complications from the injuries inflicted on him by Joseph Holmes. My mother, Deborah Chesson, passed away just over a year ago from cancer. As their only child, I feel it's my duty to represent them both today. Please know that my words are truly from the heart, and I made a promise to them both to speak on their behalf when they no longer. For 28 years, my father spent each day in a wheelchair. Every day, he faced the struggles that came with his disabilities. When Joseph Holmes chose to ambush the 3 officers that night, he shot my father twice in the back. One bullet going through several organs, puncturing his lung, exiting under his shoulder, and ultimately re-entering and lodging in his arm. The other went through his spinal cord and exited out the front of his neck, severing his C6 and C7 vertebrae, resulting in him being a quadriplegic. Because of Joseph Holmes, my father was unable to do so many of the things we take for granted. He lived and worked each day from that wheelchair, and also dealt with the never-ending health complications from his injuries, including chronic pain caused by the several spinal nerves. This was his life sentence imposed on him by Joseph Holmes, a sentence he didn't deserve, and one with no possibility of parole. This is why I believe Joseph Holmes should serve the entirety of his 50, 30, and 20-year consecutive sentences. As I explained to my 6-year-old son where I was going today, in simplified terms that he can understand, he agreed with me that Holmes should not be released because, in his own innocent, honest words, he didn't shoot just anyone, he shot a captain, and he shot my papa. And however simplified, he explained it perfectly. Joseph Holmes didn't shoot just anyone. Captain Chesson was a one-of-a-kind hero, a beloved father, husband, brother, uncle, friend, and respected brother in law, who was taken away from all of us far too soon because of Joseph Holmes' careless actions and blatant disregard for human life. My father paid the ultimate sacrifice, trying to protect his community from people like Joseph Holmes. I ask that you honor his sacrifice and continue to protect our community by not allowing Joseph Holmes back into. Thank you.
Thank you. Last, we have Captain John Sutton.
Board, Captain John Sutton with the Typical Police Department. So I'm here representing me personally, also the entire Typical Police Department, our 87 members strong, and also the Typical Fraternal Order of Police, our 55 members. So I was just born when the incident happened, Captain Chasson. But throughout my career, started 18 years old in law enforcement and with the sheriff's office. And I knew Captain Chasson then, and then eventually coming over to the Typical Police Department, I had the pleasure and opportunity to work with Captain Chasson. So I have to tell you, this was my personal experience with him. He was always full of life. He provided guidance, professional guidance, personal guidance to help me and any other officer throughout the career. And yeah, I always remember him being a jokester from little shocking kids and everything. He just couldn't wait to gag you with his next little item that he had. It was a true pleasure working with him. And unfortunate events with Mr. Holmes and the injuries that Captain Chasson received, that never let him slow him down. He was always around the office, positive attitude, again, encouraging those officers. He even still came out on calls. He was limited on what he could do, but he felt that true brotherhood and wanted to help his brothers and sisters out there, responding to the calls, escorting people, escorting Mardi Gras floats, going out there because he was disabled and handicapped, true believer, handicap parking. He would go out there and write tickets. And, sometimes I remember times he called back up doing that, and we get there quick, but he never let that slow him down. He was a true police officer, utmost integrity, and the events of Mr. Holmes took his life away way too soon. And, all the future officers that we have will never have an opportunity to experience his job, his mentorship, his leadership that he has, and then his family now, that have to suffer, that he'll never see his grandkids. And like Mr. Holmes, Sheriff Weber said, he still breathes, he can still see his family, he still wakes up every day. And Captain Chasson does not have that opportunity of Mr. Holmes. So I would respectfully ask the board deny his parole request, and that's and for our entire Fraternal Order Police 552, all of our members at the police department, and the entirety of our Typical Police Department as a whole. And also, I believe that the state Fraternal Order Police has also issued a letter requesting that his parole not.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here. All right, now, Mr. Holmes's case has been assigned to Mr. Byer. He'll take the lead on questions.
Well, let me thank Sheriff Weber for doing such an excellent job of explaining the case. I don't have to say anything about that part of it. I do need to note that there is extreme law enforcement opposition and victim opposition in this case, both current and over the years for the prior investigations. My question for you, Mr. Holmes, is seems like it. Why did you shoot the officers? What were you thinking? The guy was just being arrested for a misdemeanor. What caused that? What caused you to do what you did that night?
I guess to drinking and, during the Mardi Gras of that time, I just, but it wasn't something that I really wanted to do, but through drinking and stuff like that. And one of the police, I didn't really know if all of the police they had on kinky clothes back. And I didn't know what's what. It wasn't a civilian clothes.
So did you tell him to let him go or anything like that, or you just started shooting at him without saying a word?
Well, during that time when somebody had came in and told me about what's going on in the club like that, my nephew was getting killed and things like that. I just went out of my mind. And I'm very sorry for that. very sorry, very remorseful for that. As a result of drinking and getting high. I'm sorry. And I just pray that y'all just, I played myself on the race to the board to give me another chance because it won't happen again. Nothing like that will never happen again because throughout all those self-help programs, and since I've been incarcerated 44 years, I've learned a lot. I learned to discipline myself. And I just pray that I get another chance back to society to see my family and have them. And I'm very sorry for what had happened to the family of these officers were involved. And I'm very sorry because I made mistakes, but I'm fully responsible for my actions. And I just place myself upon the mercy to give me another chance. And it won't ever happen again. I promise, never happen again. None of that. It's just through drinking, having fun, and it's happening.
All right. That's all the question I had.
All right.
I just got one question.
Mr. Freeman?
What is the charge in 1971 about first degree murder reduced to manslaughter?
Oh, everything was out.
What did they say?
I didn't have to go to court, no time on that.
They wanna know like what happened though with that, what was that charge about?
Hmm.
They wanna know why you had that charge in 1971. Like what happened for you to get that charge?
Oh, that's happening in the club, A-Bell Ball.
Was a gun involved in that incident?
And I went to the bathroom to take a leak and then he just must have had something against me. I went fishing and then after that in my boat. And so he wanted some fishing. I told him my sister had a ballroom, had a club. And she was sitting, I didn't have none. I didn't catch anything, no fish at all. I had fish, but it was something that I bought from somebody out there while I was out there. But that was it on that. Then he pulled out his revolver and he shot me. And I shot back. He shot me in my arm.
And maybe Gordon, you can help with this, or I see Mr. Holmes has been in and out of the hospital for the past, 3 years?
DJ, you got anything?
Yes, ma'am. What about Ms. Renaud? Anything in particular that you're curious about? He does have a longer list of medical conditions. I mean, they are all currently stable right now.
That's
He
right.
wouldn't be someone that we would look at as a compassionate release or medical parole or anything like that at this time.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was looking for. I
Sure.
appreciate it. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so I think that the panel is prepared to vote unless Ms. Hemingway, is there anything you'd like to say to close it out?
No, if I can, Ms. Renata, I'd just like to clarify some things if I could right quick.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. And really it's just based on, Mr. Holmes' kind of limited our ability to articulate some of the things that he's done. And it's likely based on his age and just his cognitive ability at this age. And so I would like to, I know Ms. Hemingway, produced a brief that provides this information, but I would like to just before the board to talk about some of the things that Mr. Holmes has done over the 44 years, his intense dedication to his faith, and the humbling experience it was transforming himself to a man of God, both learning and understanding and truly feeling the great harm that he caused to the officers, their families, his own family, and his community. As he's been able to talk about, alcohol played a huge role in just the demise of his life while he was not, before he came to prison. And the brief will show you over 15 years of AA and substance abuse. Also over 20 classes that address behavior management, changing his way of thinking. So it changes his actions, which ultimately change one's life through behavior, right? And his dedication to others through hospice volunteering, the Catholic Men's Fellowship, and the Lifers Association. So today we're merely asking the committee to evaluate the now 76-year-old Joseph Holmes based on whether or not he poses a risk to public safety if he serves the remainder of his sentence on parole. As the sentence does not go away, but rather he's under the control of the Department of Probation and Parole for the remainder of his life. Obviously, he's not going to make it to 100 years. And so just based on his rehabilitation, his age, his remorse, and provided that he no longer poses a threat to society, we just pray that the board would allow him to serve the remainder of his sentence on parole. With any conditions the board deems necessary. Obviously, he's not planning to return to that community. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Now, vote. Mr. Byron?
All right, Mr. Holmes, today I'm gonna vote to deny your parole due to the seriousness and nature of the crime where 3 police officers were shot and another person was murdered, and also based on the strong law enforcement and victim opposition.
Mr. Tillis?
Mr. Holmes, it seems like you've made a change in your life, and I congratulate you for that. But because of the seriousness of this situation and the strong opposition, I hope that you continue to better yourself while you're incarcerated. My vote today is going to be to deny.
Mrs. Ledoux?
Mr. Holmes, I'm a little surprised that you were not charged with your nephew's murder. And, you know, if you take that into consideration, your sentence would have been even more severe. My vote is to deny. I don't want to lessen the fact that you've done a good job while incarcerated, and hope you continue along that track. But many times when someone takes the life of another person, it's in a conflict. You had no dog in the fight, and you shot into a group of officers, and that's a very serious crime.
Mr. Freeman?
Okay, I concur. I deny based on law enforcement, victim opposition, and definitely the nature of offense. I'm just not getting into it, but that was very heinous. So my vote is to deny.
All right, so Mr. Holmes, I want to commend you for your hospice volunteer work. I know that's very difficult. And you do have, I do believe you're sorry for what happened. You do have a good prison record, but based on, but you do have an out date. Yeah, I got a good time release date. And so based on the opposition that's been expressed here today, and the fact that you do have a mandatory release date in 2031, my vote today is to deny you. So today, sir, your parole's been denied by unanimous vote.
What do you think? Does this old man deserve to be paroled at some point to enjoy a taste of freedom before he dies? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Until next time.